Hi, I'm Rowena, and 6 years ago, my half-sister stole my fiancé without a flicker of guilt. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how my own mother let her. She rewrote the will, erased me from her obituary, and held a funeral I wasn't meant to attend. They thought I'd disappear quietly, but I didn't. I walked into that funeral holding the arm of someone Vera never expected to see again. You ever wonder how far family betrayal can go before someone breaks the silence? I take a breath and tighten my grip on the arm beside me. The weight of the air outside St. Augustine's church was thick, almost sticky. Like the Georgia summer had decided to join us in grief. A breeze stirred the Spanish moss in the trees, but it did nothing for the heat crawling under my collar. I hadn't walked into a church in years, much less this one. My black heels felt foreign on these steps, but I was here. For Mom, not her. The doors swung open, and there it was. The same chapel where Vera had once stood in lace and diamonds, looking like the bride I should have been. 6 years. That's how long it's been since I left Savannah. Since the wedding that wasn't mine. Since I packed up the last piece of my dignity and crossed state lines without a word. And yet, here I was, back where it all started, dressed in black, watching my past float in a frame next to an urn. Vera's photo sat to the left of Mom's, glossy, smiling, like she'd won. A hush swept the congregation when I stepped inside. Familiar eyes blinked twice to be sure. A few mouths whispered, like they'd seen a ghost. Maybe they had. I didn't speak. I walked, but as I passed the second row, I caught a glimpse of the aisle, the very same one where Vera had walked down, arm in arm with Clark. That was supposed to be mine. I still remembered the day Clark proposed. It wasn't grand. No candlelight, no rooftop restaurant. Just us, sitting on my porch, sipping peach tea and talking about nothing. And then everything. He reached for my hand, his thumb trembling as he asked. I said yes before he finished the sentence. We were simple, but I thought we were strong. At first, Vera had smiled, hugged me, even offered to help plan the wedding. I thought she was just being sisterly. You know, the kind of sister who pins veils to mood boards and sends dress ideas at midnight. But something in her eyes? It was too bright, too eager. Then came the appointments she rescheduled without telling me. The vendors who never got my call. The florist who suddenly didn't do hydrangeas anymore. Little things, easy to brush off until they weren't. By spring, I found out she had taken over my guest list. You've been so stressed, she'd said sweetly. Let me take something off your plate. Funny how that plate ended up broken in pieces I couldn't pick up. And then, one night, Clark sat me down, said he had something to admit. His voice was tight, face pale. I didn't mean for this to happen, he started. But it did. He and Vera had feelings, just like that. It wasn't loud. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I listened, nodded, walked out of the room and never walked back in. 2 weeks later, I left Savannah with one suitcase and no return date. No dramatic goodbye. No confrontation. Just absence. That was my protest. And the world kept spinning. I didn't block them. Didn't delete their numbers. I let them exist in a part of my phone I never opened. Mom emailed me sometimes. Nothing personal. Just hope you're doing well and the garden's blooming. Not once did she mention Clark or Vera. Silence can be louder than shouting. Then, 2 months after I'd moved into a tiny apartment in Atlanta, a gold envelope arrived in my mailbox. Thick cardstock, monogrammed, a wedding invitation. I opened it on my kitchen counter, with hands that didn't shake until they did. Rowena Maddox was not invited. Instead, in faint cursive at the bottom, it read, "Please join us in celebrating the marriage of Clark Thorne and Vera Maddox with our cherished family and friends." Family friend. That label didn't just erase me from the wedding. It erased me from the narrative. I was no longer a chapter, just a footnote, one they hoped no one would read. The next few years, a blur. I rebuilt quietly. Took a job at a community arts center. Grew plants, walked to work. Learned to cook for one. There were nights I stared at my ceiling and wondered how someone forgets a future they built in their head. Turns out, you don't. You just live around it. And now, here I was, back in the very pew where Mom once made me sit with my knees together and chin high. Back where Vera once said her vows. And there she was smiling in that photo like nothing ever broke. Someone behind me coughed. I shifted my weight and looked straight ahead. "She's back," someone whispered. "She brought someone." I held the arm beside me tighter. Let them talk. I wasn't here for closure. I was here for a reckoning. Link to next chapter. I take a breath and tighten my grip on the arm beside me. Continuing the content of the next chapter. And the moment the church doors opened, Savannah air wrapped around me like memory and fire. And in that look, we both knew the past wasn't buried in that urn. It was standing right here. The rain held off, but the sky didn't promise it would for long. Gray hung low, like the clouds were listening in. I followed the brick path up to the house, our house. Or, at least, it used to be. They'd repainted the shutters. The porch swing was gone. Someone had lined the walkway with white lilies, like it was always meant to be a funeral home and never a place where childhood laughter echoed through open windows. The door was already open. People came and went without knocking, as if the place didn't have a heartbeat once, as if someone hadn't scrubbed those floorboards. Crying quietly after her first heartbreak. Inside, it was all soft lighting and polite whispers. I stood in the foyer, shoes sinking into that too thick rug Vera always said looked too dated. She'd finally replaced it, a floral pattern that matched nothing. But that wasn't the shock. The shock was what the house had become. No one asked me. No one called to say, "Hey, Rowena, would you be okay if we used your childhood home to host the farewell you weren't invited to plan?" The banister I once sanded with bare hands now wore a silky white ribbon. I ran my fingers along it. "This was mine once," I murmured. The scent of gardenias filled the air, Mom's favorite, but arranged in tall, cold vases that made the room feel less like home and more like a set. Someone handed me a program, a simple folded card, embossed in silver. I opened it. Vera's name was printed in bold at the top. "In loving memory, prepared with devotion by Vera Maddox, eldest daughter." Eldest. I scanned the page. There was no mention of me. Not on the cover. Not in the acknowledgments. Not even as a guest speaker. Nothing. I wasn't just missing, I was erased. They'd rewritten our family history right here in ink. The guests mingled, nodding solemnly at Vera's poise. She stood near the fireplace, back straight. Eyes glassy in that way that looked graceful from a distance. She clutched a single black lace handkerchief, dabbing at the corner of her eye. And then she spoke. "Our mother," she began, "always said I was her greatest joy." The room inhaled. Some guests glanced at each other, unsure if they heard it right. Others nodded, accepting the narrative they'd been handed without question. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I felt heat crawl up my spine. Not from shame, but from something older, deeper. My chest ached not from loss, but from invisibility. I drifted away, toward the back of the house. I needed space. Air! The old sunroom was open. I stepped in. There were flower buckets in every corner. White roses, hydrangeas, sprays of baby's breath waiting to be arranged. But the window seat was still there. I sat. For a second, I was a little girl again. My mother behind me, brushing my hair and humming Patsy Cline. That was our song, except no one else knew that. Because I didn't share it, because part of me believed it was only real if I kept it safe. Now, I wasn't sure it ever was. Maybe love only counts when someone else remembers it with you. My fingers curled around the edge of the wooden table beside me, the one I had varnished one summer, because Dad forgot, and Mom said, "Let Ro try." I tried. I was always trying. And now, no one even remembered I had. Back in the main room, voices rose. A minister said something about peace and legacy. I didn't catch the words. I was lost in my own vow. I had kept quiet when Vera married the man I loved. I had kept quiet when our mother said nothing. But now, silence felt like surrender. And I was done surrendering. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want apology. I just wanted the truth to have a place at the table again. If grief could tear us down to the bone, then let mine speak louder than anyone else's performance. A hush fell over the room. The urn was brought forward, placed beside Vera's speech notes. Someone whispered, "Where's the other daughter?" Another voice responded, "I thought she passed." I stood, walked slowly. All eyes shifted, uncertain. No one stopped me. I stepped past Vera, placed a single lily beside the urn, and looked my sister in the eye. For the first time in 6 years, It wasn't the silence that broke me. It was realizing who held the pen. I needed air, not from the windows, not from the guests, but from the weight pressing on my chest. I stepped away from the crowd and climbed the stairs like I had as a child quietly, so the floorboards wouldn't creak. The upstairs hallway smelled faintly of lemon oil and something older like time trying to preserve itself. My old room stood at the end, the door ajar. I pushed it open. The walls were a pale beige now. The posters, the books, the worn quilt all gone. In their place stood a round table draped in ivory linen, a flickering candle, and a single framed photo of me at 16, smiling with braces and hope. I didn't even remember that photo being taken. This wasn't a bedroom anymore. It was a curated exhibit, a memory shaped by someone else's hands. Then I saw it. The jewelry box. My mother's, the one she kept locked, always saying, "Some things wait for their moment." I reached for it. It wasn't locked now. The hinges creaked softly as I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a strand of pearls I knew like the back of my hand. Creamy, weighty, familiar. I picked it up, examined the clasp. No engraving. I turned it, held it to the light, ran my thumb beneath the latch. Still nothing. That couldn't be right. I remembered that night, 12 years old, hiding under the covers with a flashlight, and Mama came in laughing, pulled back the blanket, and held that necklace up like a secret. "One day, this will be yours, baby," she whispered. "It has your name," right near my heart. But this one had no name. I lowered the pearls slowly. Confusion stiffened my jaw. Then I noticed the table skirt. It didn't quite touch the floor on the left. I knelt down, lifted the cloth. Another box. It was older, dustier, like it had been tucked away and forgotten or hidden. I opened it. There it was. The real necklace. Same pearls, but on the clasp, right where Mama promised. "Are my light." My breath caught. I blinked hard. This was mine. So what was the other doing in the box on display? I didn't need anyone to say it. Vera. She had switched them, chosen the version without memory, the one that wouldn't betray the lie. My fingers trembled as I fastened the real necklace around my neck. The metal was cool, but it warmed against my skin like a pulse. "She left this for me," I whispered, standing taller. Not her. I turned to the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the girl from the photo. This woman had lived in silence, had watched others write her story in invisible ink. But this necklace, this was written in silver. This was given in love. And no one, not even Vera, could steal that. I tucked it beneath my blouse, close to my heart. One last look at the photo. Then I walked out, back downstairs. The mood had shifted. Or maybe I had. The air felt thicker now, voices louder. Vera's laugh sharper than it should have been. She stood near the guest book, smiling wide, shaking hands like she was hosting a fundraiser. Her dress clung perfectly, her makeup flawless. She moved through the room like a symphony conductor, and no one dared miss her cue. I watched from a distance, didn't speak, didn't approach, but the photographer caught my eye. Click! A soft shutter snap. He nodded slightly, like he saw something worth recording, and for the first time in years, I let myself be seen. As I turned to leave the table, my hand brushed against the guest book. It lay open, a neat list of names, some with little hearts, others with quiet prayers. I flipped gently to the last page. A sentence started there, scrawled in blue ink. "In memory of the daughter," but it ended mid-line. Just a flick of the pen, then nothing, no finish, no name. I stared at the gap, then closed the book, slowly. That wasn't just an unfinished thought. It was a question, and I was done letting someone else answer it for me. Because sometimes, proof of malice is more useful than an apology. By the time the sun dipped behind the oak trees, the parlor had been rearranged. Rows of folding chairs replaced the coffee tables and bookcases. The curtains were drawn halfway, letting in a soft amber hue that gave the room a kind of solemn intimacy, like a chapel trying too hard. Vera stood near the front with a small remote in her manicured hand, rehearsing her smile between glances at the TV monitor and the hush of gathered voices. Mourners shuffled in quietly, drinks in hand, a few carrying napkins pressed to the corners of their lips, as if even grief should be tidy. I sat toward the back, where the shadows softened the sting of being overlooked. The pearl necklace was still warm beneath my blouse, grounding me. My fingers traced it once, then let go. Vera didn't look my way. The lights dimmed. The video began. Piano music slow, nostalgic. A slide appeared, in celebration of the life of Margaret Hamilton. Then came the footage. My mother laughing on a porch swing with Vera as a toddler. Vera in pigtails, blowing candles on a princess cake. A middle school science fair. Vera holding a ribbon. Her high school prom. Graduation. First job party. Wedding. Every frame was Vera. Her life. Her triumphs. Every moment captured, polished, and preserved. Not a single clip of me. Not one. No childhood dance recital. No awkward braces smile. No birthday candles or school projects. It was like I never existed. Then the final slide. Her proudest moments were being Vera's mother. The room exhaled together. Someone sniffled. Another dabbed at a tear. My hands gripped the wooden edge of the pew until my knuckles blanched. My throat tightened, not with sadness, but fury held in its cage. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message, a deliberate one. I didn't belong in the story. The worst lies aren't told out loud. They're framed in silence. I sat through the final chords of music, watched the screen fade to black, and listened to the polite applause. Vera turned to the crowd like a maestro taking her final bow, the expression on her face soft and triumphant. That's when I stood. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. As I walked toward the door, all eyes turned. Whispers bubbled. I could feel the stares land and lift like cold rain. Halfway out, I caught Clark's gaze. For the first time in 6 years, his face dropped, like he'd seen a ghost carrying his consequences. I didn't blink, didn't pause. I walked past. I've learned silence is louder when you're not the one trembling. Outside, the sky had shifted into that deep blue southern twilight where everything feels suspended in stillness. The photographer was adjusting his equipment near the porch. I walked straight to him. "Hi," I said, gently. "Would you mind sharing a copy of today's footage with me?" He blinked, hesitated. "Oh, sure, of course. Are you family?" I smiled, just enough to make him slightly nervous. I said. "You'll see me in the photos now." He nodded. "I'll send you the link by tomorrow." I gave him a small thank you, then turned and walked to my car parked at the curb. My heels clicked once. Twice then, the sound of my phone buzzing broke the silence. I pulled it from my purse. "Unknown number, 1 line. You were supposed to be gone for good. Stop showing up. No name. Just venom." I didn't reply. Didn't flinch. I saved it. Because sometimes a threat typed in cowardice says more than 1,000 fake smiles. And this time, I was keeping receipts. I didn't cry. Not after the text. Not when I saw who it was meant to silence. I just stood still for a moment. Let the words settle like ash. Then turned. Heels steady on the driveway's gravel path. The humid dusk had wrapped Savannah in that thick southern stillness that always feels like something's about to break loose. I headed back toward the house. The sky to the west bruised a little deeper with every step. Somewhere beyond the trees, thunder grumbled low. Fitting. The camera crew was halfway through dismantling their lights on the porch. Vera, of course, was still entertaining, smiling for photos, cradling sympathy like champagne in a crystal flute. I passed by them and walked straight to her. "Can I have a word?" I said, tone clipped but quiet. Her smile froze. She nodded. We slipped away into the side garden. The air smelled like cut grass and dying roses. "I'm not here for a fight," I began, "but I need you to hear me." She folded her arms. "Rowena, it's not the time." It wasn't the time to cut me from the program either, I said. "Or the eulogy. Or the video?" "I didn't cut you," she replied, tilting her head. "I simply honored the parts of Mom's life that mattered." I laughed once sharp. "Short. If you try to bury me while I'm still breathing again." "I promise, Vera. I will remind every soul in this town exactly who you are." She stepped closer. Her voice dipped like honey, but stung like vinegar. "You always loved threats, didn't you?" "No," I said, eyes locked to hers. "I learned them from watching you." A pause. We stood just inches apart, 2 shadows cast by the same porch light. decades of rivalry stretching between us like wire ready to snap. Then came the sound raised voices had drawn notice. A few guests turned their heads through the glass, murmuring among themselves. I didn't move. I wasn't hiding. Clark stood near the drink table, holding a glass he hadn't touched. He saw it all his face, a theater of shame and something older than regret. Vera smoothed her blouse and walked back toward the house, jaw clenched. Her makeup, flawless earlier, had smudged just slightly at the corners. Not enough for pity. Just enough to notice. I stayed in the garden, under the weeping willow Mom once tied ribbons to. She used to say it cried for us when we couldn't. That's when the memory came uninvited. 1 year before she died, a phone call. I can't keep up with you two anymore, she said. Sometimes it's easier to love one child well than two poorly. And I'd said, then maybe I never had a chance. She didn't respond. I hung up. We never spoke again. Back then, I cried for weeks. Now, I just watched the orange bleed from the sky and felt nothing clean, just old truths resurfacing. I went inside, near the memorial guest book. I pulled a small note card from my purse, wrote carefully, for the daughter who remembers it all. I slid it between the pages and folded the pen beneath. Let someone wonder later what that meant. Let them read between the lines. Let them see my name. Then I turned and walked the same hallway I used to tiptoe down as a child, past portraits that only told half the story, past doors once slammed in anger and closed in silence. Back to the guest room. It smelled faintly of lemon polish and something older. I slipped off my shoes. Lay down! Let the ceiling stare back. That's when I heard it, 3 gentle taps, then a whisper. You don't know what she's planning. I got up, opened the door. No one there, but something was. A yellow envelope rested at my feet. The envelope was heavier than it should have been, not in weight, but in what it carried. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, the sun barely pushing through the plantation shutters, and peeled it open with the careful fingers of someone defusing a bomb. Inside was a photocopy yellowed from the original ink, but unmistakable. My mother's handwriting. A draft, will, dated 7 years ago. I read each line twice, maybe 3 times. It was short, almost informal, but clear. Half the family home, half the business shares. My name, Rowena Grace Langston, written in her slanted cursive, next to those words. But what stopped my breath was the thick red line across the front. Void. Notarized nowhere. Just the word, and a sticky note. Pale green. They didn't want you to see this. Signed simply with the letter. E. I held it for a long moment, then tucked it beneath the pillow. I had questions fewer than I used to. Now, I just needed answers. And next steps. By late morning, I was downtown in a small law office tucked behind an old florist shop. The bell chimed as I walked in. The kind of sound that didn't belong to secrets or betrayal. But here I was, bringing both. Miss Henderson stood when I entered. She was in her 60s, with silver at her temples and reading glasses on a gold chain. Miss Langston, she asked, voice calm but clipped. Yes, I said. Rowena? I handed her the envelope, then sat. I'm not looking to destroy anyone, I told her, but I'm done being invisible. I want what's fair. She scanned the papers silently for a few minutes, then looked up at me. That's the difference between you and her, she said. You're not trying to win. You're trying to be counted. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Let's begin, she said. The meeting took just under an hour. By the time I left, I had a manila folder in my purse and something more valuable than proof. Direction. Back in my room, I sat by the desk and opened my laptop. Drafted an email to Vera. Never typed in her address. Just saved it to drafts. You can keep pretending I was never part of this family. Just know I'm not pretending anymore. I hit save, then pulled the printed draft will from my folder and slid it into the inside pocket of my purse. Some people erase you. Others hope you'll erase yourself. I've decided to be permanent. My phone buzzed. Clark. I hesitated, then answered. I saw the envelope, he said. I didn't send it. But I know who did. Why now? I asked. A pause. Because what she's about to do next makes the past look kind. The line went quiet, except for our breath. What did Vera do? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then came the ping of a photo message. I opened it. Vera. sitting in a county records office, leaning across a desk toward a man I didn't recognize. Her expression was hard, precise, not grief, strategy. Beneath the image, Clark had typed, "It's not about Mom's funeral anymore. It's about what she's burying next." My pulse ticked up. No more reacting, no more retreating. The next step wouldn't be defense. It would be offense. The courthouse parking lot was hotter than usual that morning, the kind of sticky southern heat that made every breath feel like soup. I pulled in slowly, clutching the manila envelope Ms. Henderson had asked me to bring. It was supposed to be a quiet filing. Routine. No audience. No spectacle. But there it was, Vera's silver SUV, parked front and center like she was headlining a parade. And standing beside it, a man with a camera, lens already up, filming her as she adjusted her dress and smiled like it was a gala. As I stepped out, she turned with a wide grin. "Rowena, I thought you'd show—" "What luck? We're filming a little piece for the estate record." She stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "You manipulating dying people now?" she asked, voice syrupy but loud enough to catch attention. "Takes guts to come crawling back for scraps." I didn't flinch, just kept walking. But as I passed her shoulder, I said quiet, "But sure, you wanted a stage. I'm giving you a spotlight." Inside the courthouse, Ms. Henderson was waiting, unbothered as always. But my hands shook as I handed over the documents. Not from fear, from restraint. Later that afternoon, Clark and I met at the tiny diner down the block. Vinyl booths, weak coffee, and a jukebox stuck on Patsy Cline. He slid into the booth across from me and didn't order anything. Just stared at his folded hands until I said, "You said you knew who sent the will copy." He nodded. "It wasn't me. It was Ellie Mom's old nurse. But that's not why I called you here." He pulled a small flash drive from his coat and placed it on the table. "I set up a nanny cam. When Vera moved in with Mom, I knew something wasn't right. He wouldn't meet my eyes." She recorded over most of it. But I recovered the deleted clips. I didn't touch the drive. I just asked, "What's on it?" "Verbal abuse, drug dosing." She burned Mom's diary, called her senile in front of people, then told her to shut up in private. My mouth went dry. "She didn't just erase you," he whispered. "She tried to rewrite your entire existence." By evening, Ms. Henderson had reviewed the footage and was already drafting the motion to contest the will. "This isn't just sentiment anymore," she said. "This is undue influence. Plain and cold." She placed a pen in my hand. "You'll need to write an affidavit," I wrote slowly. Clearly, each word felt like a drop of molten steel poured into a mold. I didn't accuse her. I documented her. That night, Vera made her next move, and it wasn't subtle. The local paper's morning headline read, "Estranged daughter. Returns to contest, estate, troubled past surfaces." Below it, a blown-up excerpt from my old college record. The expulsion, the depression, even a police report dismissed. But still ugly. Vera was digging. Instead of hiding, I filmed a short video from my kitchen counter. I looked into the camera and said, "Yes, I was lost once, but I didn't stay lost. I clawed my way back with honesty and time." Can Vera say the same? By noon, the comments section was filled with people I hadn't spoken to in years. Neighbors, former teachers, strangers who said, "That's courage." I didn't reply to any of them. I just read them all. Just before midnight, I heard a knock on the door. No one there, but on the porch sat a cardboard box. Inside, a single family photo, our Christmas portrait from when I was 12. Only my face was burned. Just mine, blackened like it had been held to flame. Tucked beneath it, a note. "Stay out of what you never belonged to." I stood there, holding that photo, and I didn't feel fear. I felt clarity. "She's cornered," I whispered. In another part of the city, I imagined her dialing her phone with manicured nails, hissing into the receiver. If she wants war, she'd say, "Let's give her fire." And in my apartment, I sat at my desk, plugged in the flash drive, and pressed play. The nanny cam flickered to life. And in the first 10 seconds, I heard something that changed everything. 2 days later, the air outside the church fellowship hall felt thick enough to cut. Vera had arranged what she called a private family remembrance, something quieter, more intimate than the memorial before. She didn't send me an invitation, but I came anyway. I wore gray, not black, not mourning. I wasn't grieving anymore. not the way they wanted me to. Whispers trailed behind me as I stepped inside. Some folks stiffened when they saw me. A few glanced toward Vera like children looking for their teacher's reaction. Clark stood at the entrance, and when our eyes met, he gave a small nod. No words, just presence. Vera stood near the podium with a bouquet of lilies in one hand, her other clutching a pearl-edged folder like it held Holy Scripture. She smiled when she saw me tight and brittle. No one stopped me, but everyone watched. She began her speech with syrupy grace. Today, we honor a mother who lived with dignity and loved fiercely. Then she launched into the curated memories, ones I knew had been carefully edited, rehearsed. I waited until her voice hit a high note about legacy. Then I walked, slow and steady, to the AV table near the back. I didn't say anything at first, just exchanged a glance with the volunteer running the setup, and showed him the flash drive. He looked from me to Vera, hesitated. I whispered, "Play it, please." He did. The lights dimmed. At first, there was only grainy footage. Then, voices. Vera's voice sharp, unmistakable. "You don't need to remember her. She left you?" Like always. Then, the sound of paper tearing. Footage of her yanking letters from a box and feeding them into the fireplace. A pause. Then, a quiet, trembling voice. "Our mother. I miss my Rowena. She was always my quieter heart." Gasps scattered across the room. Someone dropped a glass. It didn't break, but the sound felt like thunder. When the lights came back on, Vera looked pale. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then snapped. "That's manipulation. You edited it." "No," I said, stepping forward, my voice calm. "That was you." Raw and uncut. She tried to pivot. "You're just hungry for attention. Always have been. That's why you left school, why you stayed away." I looked past her. "I didn't come here for revenge." I turned to the others. "I came because this was the last place she said my name." A hush spread, then something heavier movement. Guests, one by one, began standing up. Not in applause, not in protest. Just leaving her. As the last of them started toward the exit, the side door creaked open. Ms. Henderson entered with purpose in her step, and a sealed manila envelope in hand. She walked straight to Vera, extended the document. "Temporary injunction," she said coolly. "The judge has reason to believe the will was signed under coercion. Execution of the estate is halted until formal hearing." Vera snatched the envelope but didn't read it. Her fingers curled over the edge like claws. Clark didn't move. He stood to the side, arms crossed, eyes steady. No more hiding. Vera's shoulders dropped, her face a portrait cracking. I walked past her without another glance. The ash urn was on a small wooden pedestal, surrounded by lilies. I bent, placed a single white lily at the base, straightened, took a long breath. Not a dramatic one, just air. Truth didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like finally breathing clean air after months underground. Later, on the steps of the church, the air cooler now, I watched clouds roll in. That's when she approached. An older woman, hair pinned neatly, wearing a soft blue scarf I swore I remembered from years ago. "Rowena?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm Evelyn," she said. "Your mother's oldest friend." She looked at me the way someone does when they're about to tear off a bandage that stayed too long. "There's something your mother never told either of you," she said. Then she paused. "It's about your real father." My pulse didn't spike. Not right away. But I leaned in, because something in her voice told me this wasn't just another secret. This was a door, one I didn't even know I'd kept locked. Evelyn sat with me under the old oak outside the church, her voice steady, her hands folded like she was cradling time itself. "His name was Louis. Louis Dillard," she said, played trumpet like he could bend sadness into silk. I didn't blink. I just listened. "He loved your mother." "But the family, your grandparents, they wouldn't have it." "Said it wasn't proper. Said she had to choose." Evelyn paused. She chose survival, but she never stopped loving him. I didn't feel betrayed, not the way I thought I would. I felt steady, as if something in my blood had just introduced itself. He wasn't some secret scandal. He was music. That explained why I always cried during Miles Davis records and felt safe when I heard brass horns on street corners. I let that settle. Weeks passed. Savannah moved on. but I stayed still long enough to watch what didn't. The judge ruled in favor of a formal review. Vera was stripped of temporary control over the estate. She didn't contest it, just disappeared. Rumor had it she checked into a private facility. Exhaustion? The press called it. Clark moved out of the family home. No press release. Just a moving truck on a quiet Tuesday. He texted once, said, "I'm sorry for standing still when I should have spoken." I didn't respond. Even monsters have to sleep eventually. That doesn't make them innocent, just tired. I bought a little cottage near Tybee Island, where the marsh smells like salt and second chances. It had a porch with creaking boards and a screen door that slapped shut behind me like punctuation. The kind of place where quiet isn't lonely. I adopted a scrappy terrier mix from the shelter. Named him Lewis. He snored like an old saxophone. On Wednesdays, I taught songwriting to kids at the community music school. It didn't feel like rewriting history, just honoring it. Justice didn't make me whole, but it cleared space for me to breathe again. And I was starting to like the sound of my own breath. One morning, Clark came by. He stood on my porch, holding a grocery bag like it was a peace offering. I let him sit. He said he'd filed for divorce, said he didn't expect forgiveness, but wanted me to know he was trying to be a better version of the man I once loved. I told him, sometimes closure isn't reunion, it's release. He nodded. We watched the tide roll in for a while. Then he left. No promises. No bitterness, just the soft click of goodbye. That night, I sat on the sand and wrote my mother a letter. Dear Mom, it began, "You were complicated." And so was I, but I still loved you. And I always will. I folded the page, lit a match, and watched it curl into flame. The ash lifted, danced with the wind, and scattered toward the tide. Not rage, not revenge, just letting go. A few mornings later, I sat on the dock behind my cottage, Louis at my feet, curled like a comma. The sky had turned the color of peach flesh just before the bite. I looked straight ahead, then toward the small camera I'd been recording into for weeks. It had captured everything, my truths, my missteps, my voice finally spoken without apology. If someone tries to erase you, I said, don't vanish. Rewrite your name. Louder, clearer, braver. I smiled. Not wide, but enough. Then I closed my journal. The last page read, and still, I remained. Sometimes the deepest battles we face are not fought in courtrooms or family dining rooms, but in the quiet corners of our own hearts. Looking back, I realize now that being erased wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning of finally becoming someone who doesn't wait to be seen to exist. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: you don't need permission to reclaim your name. You don't need approval to tell your story. And the past, no matter how jagged, doesn't get the final word unless you let it. Maybe you've felt invisible too. Maybe you've stood in rooms where your truth made people uncomfortable. I hope this story reminded you that silence isn't peace. That standing up for yourself, even when your voice shakes, is still standing. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to fight to be remembered by family, friends, or even yourself? What helped you find your voice again? Let's talk in the comments. If this story touched your heart, drop a 1 in the comments or let me know where you're watching from. And if you didn't connect with it, tell me why. I read every response, and I'd love to hear your perspective. If you believe stories like this matter, if you want to hear more truths that hurt but heal, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep these voices alive. Until the next story, take care and never be afraid to rewrite your name.